Hey guys, welcome to Cinema Probe. I'm your host Christopher Lee, and with me again is the infamous movie buff himself, Jordan Huggies.
How's it going, guys? Yeah, I'm ready to get into this podcast, and it's definitely an exciting topic for today's episode.
So today, Hughes, we're going to be going over top 5 scary movies. We kind of decided we're going to do a horror movie draft.
Yeah, draft, if you will. We already flipped the coin. You get first pick, so I'm a little upset about that.
First pick.
But I think that it's going to be a really good episode, and I'm excited to talk about some scary movies.
Yeah, I am too. I really love horror movies, so I'm ready to get this started. We've got our beers. We're just relaxing. There's nothing better.
Yeah, we're ready for it. What draws you to horror movies?
Ooh, I think just feeling scared. I like being scared, not like horror, like going to haunted houses or anything like that. But there's something about horror movies that just get your blood pumping.
Right, exactly. And definitely, when I was a kid, I used to be scared shitless of haunted corn mazes, haunted houses. I used to be scared of everything. Watching scary movies, always coming into my parents' bedroom, asking if I could sleep in there for the night because I'm so scared to sleep in my own room alone. But over the years, I think I've really grown into a love for horror movies and that feeling of getting that adrenaline and that blood pumping, like you said, just watching the horror movies and getting scared. It's just a fun time.
I totally agree. All right, guys. Well, sit back, get comfortable, grab your popcorn, turn your headphones up. We've got our beers, and we're ready to get this stuff started.
Awesome. Let's go. First pick.
First pick. Oh, I'm gonna have to go with The Exorcist.
I had that as my first pick too. I think you can't have The Exorcist not on your top 5 list. It's such a classic movie.
It is.
Made in the 70s. One of the first real demon possession movies that was very prominent, and it's just very eerie. There's something eerie about it, and all the imagery, the head spinning, iconic, right? The puking, just the cursing in it from the little girl, especially when she's possessed by this demon or the devil. What is it? We really can't tell.
There's 2 words that come to mind when I automatically think about it: unpredictable and visceral.
Yeah, definitely.
I think those 2 words immediately just summarize this movie. I mean, The Exorcist, I think pretty much anyone and everyone can say they've at least seen part of The Exorcist. I mean, there's a reason why, it was given 87% on Rotten Tomato, 8.1 by movie critics. The movie is just, it's stood the time. It's just an amazing movie.
It is. And there's so many different aspects of this movie. So there's so many new movies out that kind of are like, hey, weird shit's happening in the house. Let's get our daughter, oh my God, it's possession, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Let's get the priest out here right away. We need the evidence so that we can get an exorcism. Boom, stat. But the thing about The Exorcist is she actually brings her daughter to the doctors, and they're doing CAT scans. They're doing everything that they can to see if there's anything health-wise wrong with this little girl before they jump to this, we need an exorcism part. And not just that, the acting from the priests that are in the movie is really good, and the struggle with his faith. While he's, that's a big struggling point, and he's got his mother at home. There's a lot more to the movie than just the exorcism, which is I really think you don't see that nowadays in demonic possession movies.
Well, I mean, this was based off of a real event. What was it, Annalise Michelle? I don't know the exact.
It was actually a little boy that was possessed, and I'd say that with air quotes. That kind of inspired this movie, but I really think that the movie kind of took its own creative liberties when they were writing and directing this movie.
Of course. All right, so you got mine, The Exorcist. We both agree. Solid movie.
Solid.
What's your number 1 pick?
I'm gonna go with The Shining, Stanley Kubrick.
Okay.
I really like that movie. Just Jack Nicholson, amazing acting in that movie. And you got Shelley Duvall, who plays Jack Nicholson's wife in the movie. And it's been said that Stanley Kubrick really treated her like shit during the filming of this movie.
Oh, I can believe it.
And you
Stanley
can
Kubrick.
definitely see that on screen. She looks tired. She looks just dragged out. She just looks like she really doesn't want to be there. And I think that's really captured in her acting performance. And one of my favorite things about this movie is that scene where she's backing up on the stairs and Jack Nicholson's walking towards her. And he's like, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you. You know, it just keeps on repeating that. And she's just swinging the bat, like, get away from me, get away from me. And he's like, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to bash your fucking brains in, you know? And it's just, it just catches you off guard a little bit.
Yeah.
And she looks so tired. And it's because Stanley Kubrick had her redo that scene over and over and over and over again. So that sense of her just feeling tired and just feeling worn out, that's real. And that really shows on screen. I really like that acting performance from both sides. Even the little boy in that movie, his acting performance, amazing. And he does a really good job for a child actor. And there's just a lot of mystery to the movie. And you get to see Jack Nicholson's character just spiral down into madness. And I really enjoyed this movie.
Well, I definitely think whether you are Exorcist fan or The Shining, I think both of those movies are interchangeable. I think I could have that as my number one, or you could have Exorcist as your number one. Both are amazing movies, and I think, you know, they're both solid number one picks.
Definitely.
For my second round pick, I've got none other than Nightmare on Elm Street, the original. Came out in 1984. Freddy Krueger, I mean, there's nothing more. I remember, I wasn't born in 84, I was born in 92, but I remember the first time I ever saw it, just being scared shitless.
There's something about sleep that just, you know, you've had a long day at work. You've had a long day in general. You just want to go home. You just want to take a nap. You just want to sleep. And Nightmare on Elm Street really takes a turn on that and says, well, you're only really in danger when you go to sleep.
Yeah.
And that's what I really enjoy about this film, is that you're in danger when you're sleeping. And so that trying not to sleep, but sleep is such an important part of our day-to-day lives. You know, we need our sleep. And the fact that this movie villain is taking that away from you just adds to the level of how good this horror film is.
So I read one comment that said, you know, bed is meant to be safe, secure, and free of razor-sharp blades ready to plunge through your chest. That is exactly, you know, kind of along the lines that you just went. I mean, there's nothing more scary than the boogeyman, you know, and that's what Freddy Krueger was.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a reason why they made so many Nightmare on Elm Street movies. There's a reason why even today, you know, Freddy Krueger is still a common costume every Halloween.
Right.
You know, those like characters like Freddy Krueger, you know, Jason Voorhees, they all stand the time, like, with test of time.
Yeah, they're definitely even Michael Myers. You see his mask a lot, you know, and it's something that really just, like you said, stands the test of time and is always brought up. Every Halloween, people like to have movie marathons, and those characters always seem to pop up during people's movie marathons. And just another thing I like about Nightmare on Elm Street is they were really creative with how they filmed some of the scenes.
Sure.
Like the scene in the bedroom, Johnny Depp, when the blood's, you know, it looks like it's bursting out of the bed. But really how they made that scene was the room was flipped upside down. Mm-hmm. And then they just poured fake blood through the bed. And it just looks so good on screen. And it just, you know, gives testament to how creative they were for the set designs.
Well, you could say, I mean, modern horror movies, and when I say modern, I'd say anything 2000 to now.
Yeah.
Classic horror movies, you know, anything 2000 below. You know, how they made classic horror movies, you know, sometimes, yeah, you know, you don't have the CGI, you don't have all these, you know, crazy budgets. They were forced to, like, think outside the box.
Right.
So, I mean, it's there's a reason why those movies are so good. There's a reason why they're cult classics.
Yeah.
And it's between the storyline and just the sheer terror that it brought us when we were kids.
Yeah, it's like you said, the times that these classic movies were made, you really had to be creative. You know, you didn't have all the CGI we have now.
Sure.
And that's something I like about modern day horror movies is the ones that don't use a lot of CGI, the ones that use practical effects. I think it really gives a certain light to the movie. You can usually tell when something's fake.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you know, in 2023, CGI has gotten pretty good.
It has.
Special effects have gotten good, but I think that the practical effects, like, it's real. You know it's not fake because it's right there. It's happening. It just really, really stands out to me whenever a movie uses practical effects.
It's true. All right, so hit me with your number 2 pick.
Number 2, I'm going to go with Sinister.
Okay.
I really like this movie. It's different than most movies. You know, with most movies, you kind of can tell what the main antagonist is, whether it's going to be a demon or a monster, or in some cases a real person, you know, a crazy serial killer. But with Sinister, you can't really tell what it is. You know it's paranormal, but you don't really know
what it is.
You know, it's like an evil entity, but you don't really know what it is. You know, this guy going into this house, moving into this house, you know, and finding these films, and just they're kind of disturbing. And from the first scene, you know, you can see the family being hung on the tree. You just know you're in for something different. You just know you're in for something just honestly a little morbid, a little twisted.
Yeah.
And just this whole drawn out, you know, it's all connected, all these families being murdered by the youngest child, and then how the children are being taken into the films. It's different, and I really like this movie. And there's a few parts of it where I think it's a little drawn out. You know, Ethan Hawke kind of walking through the dark hallways with a baseball bat. There's a lot of it drawn out a little bit. You know, it's kind of like builds up the suspense and then kind of winds down and then builds it back up again. But I really liked the movie. It was creepy. It was scary. And I was scared when I was watching it. I thought it was really good.
So the thing I really actually liked about Sinister was the ability to kind of do this regular movie style, but then add the the first person picture, basically. You know, the at home movie where it's mixing it up to where when it's getting to those movies, those VHS tapes.
Mm-hmm.
You know that something's gonna happen. You don't really know when, but you know something's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Like I remember the lawnmower scene.
Oh yeah.
You know, you're just sitting there and you're just watching them, you know, cut the lawn, and you're like, okay, nothing's happening, and then all of a sudden, bang, something happens.
Yeah, and it's really one of the only jump scares in the movie. There's not really many jump scares, and especially with that family movie, with that part of the movie, the rest are kind of not jump scary.
Yeah.
You can kind of see it. It's really morbid and everything.
True.
But one thing I also like about the movie is that each of the tapes has a name. Like, for example, the one where they drown them in the pool, it's called Pool Party. Mm-hmm. You know, one where they set the family on fire in the car, it's called Family Barbecue. There's like weird just morbid titles to each of the movies, and they all start out as like, oh, this could actually look like a regular family movie. You know, they're playing in the yard, and then all of a sudden it cuts to them being hung. Oh, they're, you know, having a family barbecue. Boom, it cuts to them being burned up in the car. You know what I mean? Oh, they're playing in the pool. Boom, they're getting drowned. It just, it's morbid, and especially when you find out that the kids are the one killing the family, that it just kind of makes it a little disturbing.
I can agree. All right, so on to number 3.
Number 3.
I'm going with a modern day horror movie. I think The Conjuring.
I really like The Conjuring too.
I think The Conjuring, for modern horror movies, is just one of the best. I think I could go back and watch The Conjuring 15 times, and I would still have the same reaction that I had day one.
Yeah, I remember watching it in theaters for the first time, and there's that scene where the witch is like on top of the wardrobe, on top of
Oh,
like
yeah.
the closet. And I just remember sitting down that night, and I had kind of a cupboard like that behind me. And I just remember thinking back to that scene and honestly taking a glance behind my back. Like, I know
Thinking
it's a movie. I
something
know
was
it's,
up there.
yeah, I know it's a movie. I know it's fake, but like there's just something about it where you just kind of like looking around like is there something behind me? You know, it kind of like gets you thinking. And the fact that they preface it with based on a true story.
Well, yeah,
and
I
the
mean,
thing I love about the Conjuring movies is at the end, usually during the credits, they'll play like an audio recording
Oh yeah, they show pictures
of
from
the real
family.
real. Yeah,
Well,
I really like that.
my thing is, I think with it based off of, true people, true events, because it is based off of true events, but
It's Hollywood.
yeah, the lines of where it was basically based off of is kind of thin.
Yeah.
But I think, it is based off of true people, with Ed and Lorraine Warren. You have the actual parent family. I think that automatically makes it a little bit scarier. And then if you do your research and you go and look up the actual story of it, 100%.
And
It
think
just
about
makes it even better.
And think about in recent years, there's people who have made YouTube videos saying,
100%.
"Oh, hey, we're gonna spend the night in the Conjuring house," and then think about all the movies that have come from this one movie. You have the second Conjuring, even the third Conjuring. You have the Nun, which I didn't think was that good,
Yeah.
but
That's a story for another time.
Exactly. If you didn't have The Conjuring, you wouldn't have all those movies.
Well,
It really started a trend for all these movies, and it makes you want to watch the other ones.
I agree. I totally agree. That's why, I could have brought that a little bit further up on my list, but I thought 3 was the perfect spot for it. I think James Wan, the director, did an absolutely amazing job. So
I really like the scene where they're playing clap.
Oh
you
yeah.
know, and she has the match out, and it's just all dark. All you can see is her silhouette with the match,
Yeah.
and then you just see the hands come behind her and clap, and she just
Yeah.
gets scared. I really love that scene. I thought with the kids playing that and then turning that into a scary scene, I really like that writing.
I completely agree. All right, so you got my number 3. Hit me with yours.
My number 3 is gonna be Hereditary.
Ooh.
I really like Hereditary. It just talks about family drama, which I feel like is something, I'm going to say, I could be wrong, but 90% of the population goes through some kind of family drama.
Completely agree.
And it takes an interesting turn when it comes to family drama. What can you inherit from your parents? Because obviously, the grandma was the one who really started it all. Well, I should say the mother is the one who really started it all with this whole cult-like thing, and even during the funeral scene, she's talking about she was always very private with her rituals and all that kind of stuff, and it kind of gets you going okay, what was the mom up to, and you never really see her other than one scene where she kind of turns off the light and you can kind of see her in the corner. And one thing I love about this movie is there's certain scenes where if you're not really looking for it,
It's not there.
you're not
You
going to
don't
see it. Exactly. And it's just, there's so much of that where there's kind of something at the very edge of the screen, and then the camera kind of pans out and you still don't really even notice it. Both times, I've seen this movie multiple times, and each time I watch it, I see it now. But the first time I watched it, I remember there's a scene where he's laying in bed, and the mom is kind of possessed, and she's in the corner of the ceiling. And at first, the first time I ever watched that movie, I did not notice her until the camera panned out. But you can see her the entire scene. And I really like that. I really like the fact that there's little tiny things in the corner of the scene where if you don't see it right away, you're really not going to see it unless you're watching it multiple times. The second watch through, you kind of pick up on more things, and that's why I really think it has a lot of rewatchable ability, is that you can watch it multiple times because each time you watch it, you're going to pick up on something else.
I mean, I totally agree. I think you definitely have to watch it like 3-4 times before you can say, okay, I think I've seen it all.
Yeah.
You watch it the first time and there's a lot of things you miss. There are definitely some scenes in there when you watch it the first time that you're like shock value to the 10th degree.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, that car scene driving down the road,
it definitely
it messed up everybody.
It grabs your attention right away. It's so unexpected, and it just happens right away that you're just, what the hell just happened? It just comes out of nowhere. And then the fact that he's just so in shock that he just drives home and no one notices until the next morning when she's like, hey, I'm going to go out to the store. And she goes out there and you just hear screaming bloody murder. It just really adds to the character development for Peter in the movie. And just the fact that he thinks that this vengeful spirit is after him, and the mom's like, I have to stop this. And at the beginning of the movie, you kind of feel this rift between mother and son, but towards the end, she really just wants to help her family. And then you have the dad that just doesn't believe in any of this, and he's just trying to hold his family together. I think every single character played a vital role in this movie, and it really came together very well.
Okay, I agree. Now, for my number 4, I know we kind of discussed scary movies before we even got started.
Mm-hmm.
My number 4 is actually Scream.
Okay.
I watched the new Scream last night, and I've got to say there's a reason why Scream is my number 4.
Okay.
I think it revolutionized what you think of when you think of slasher films.
Yeah.
Yes, it has your stereotypical tropes of there's always a ditzy blonde that gets stabbed at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you have sex on camera. You're getting stabbed. It's always the love interest. It's always, you name it. But Wes Craven's Scream just revolutionized the whole slasher genre.
What I like about Scream a lot is that it kind of, from the beginning of the movie, kind of tells you kind of have to figure out who this is. Yeah. Who is it? It's a mystery. And, you have the scene where they're all kind of like, oh, well, maybe it was you. And like, you really think I killed her? And it's just, it adds a lot to the movie. Kind of like, it's almost a murder mystery, but it's a horror film. Yeah. It adds a lot of mystery to the movie. And I really like that you're trying to figure out who it is the entire movie, and then you finally figure out who it is, and in a lot of cases it's the last person that was on the back of your mind. It's always like, oh, well, it was them. You know what I mean? And especially when you figure out that it was them working together, you're like, well, geez, you know what I mean? And one thing that's really scary about the movie is that it's real. Like that honestly could actually happen. Someone from your high school that you're friends with just going around killing people. Like, as far-fetched as that seems, it's not paranormal. There's no monster. It's a high school kid killing other high school kids. You know what I mean? And it just adds a lot to the movie.
It's true. So, as I said, I've seen them all. I've watched 1 through now 6.
Right.
Obviously, 1 through 3, solid. 4, 5, 6, I felt kind of brought it back to what was, your late 90s with your Scream 1, 2, and 3.
Do you recommend it for people who haven't seen it?
100%.
Okay.
I can honestly say I highly recommend the new Scream.
Okay.
You have some of the originals come back like they've done in, previous ones, but then they kind of...
Like Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween.
But they keep they do their kind of their own storyline. Right. And that's what I kind of liked. Yeah. But, rewatching it, it made me want to go back and watch the series all over again. And that's what I look for when I'm looking for a new movie, or I'm looking for a new scary movie. Like, give me something that makes me want to go back and watch the original.
And there's a lot of times where they made so much money and had so much success with previous films in a franchise that they just go and try to remake them, and maybe it's called, number 4, but it's kind of just the same old, and you're looking for something a little new, but refreshing and also kind of familiar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You want it to be familiar. You don't want it to be a whole nother different movie, but you want it to also be refreshing, something you haven't really seen before.
Well, I also like that they weren't afraid to make fun of themselves.
Right.
I feel like if you're a blockbuster, movie, and you have the ability to poke fun at yourself with your stereotypical tropes,
Mm-hmm.
or the whodunits, you've already won my vote.
Right.
So that was, I had them initially at number 5, and the more I just sat here and I was twiddling with it, I was like, I've got to go with it. I've got to move them up a little bit.
Right.
So what's your number 4?
Number 4 for me, I'm gonna go It. It's a classic.
Hold on, we talking original It or remake?
So they had the original made-for-TV version.
Yeah.
Which I think at the time they did what they could. But I'm going to go with the 2017 It. And I really like the children acting in that movie. It was funny, but also scary, like it's supposed to be. It's a horror movie. It's supposed to be scary. It kind of plays on everyone's fear of clowns, which I think is a fear a lot of people have. And
Sure.
It really plays on that. And I love the whole, it feeds off of your fear, because that's something that a lot of movies try to do, but I think It did it really well. And I really like with the newer ones, what they did was they split it up into 2 parts. They had the first part where they were children and the second part where they were adults. And I think that was the right way to do it. With the first one, made for TV, they kind of did what they could. It was long, and they tried to fit the entire story into one film, which I think was, at the time, they kind of did what they could. I really love the clown in the made-for-TV version, and I love the scene where she visits the old lady's house, and she looks down at the tea, and it's blood, and she looks up, and the old lady's falling apart and decrepit. I really like that scene. And I really like the jokingness of the joke of the clown, in the made-for-TV version. But they really did it right with the newer ones by splitting up the 2 parts of the story. They really did it right. It was still scary. The clown, the acting was amazing. They had some really good actors come in to play certain parts. And I really enjoyed the newer ones. They were really good.
So I 100% agree. I think that the cast for the new It movies, phenomenal. Whether it's the children in the first part or the adults in the second. I think
Right.
both, they picked amazing actors and actresses to play those roles. As far as the original, even Stephen King himself, wasn't a fan of it. And I think if you're making a movie off of the source material that Stephen King wrote, and the author comes out and says, not a huge fan of it, I think you need to, kind of go back to the drawing board. They did. It took years, but they finally did. And Stephen King has came out and said that he likes this version.
Then you also have instances like, from my number 1 pick, The Shining, where Stephen King came out and said, they didn't really follow my book a whole lot. Yeah. The general storyline was there, but they didn't really follow a lot of what I put in my book. But it's still a classic when you think about horror movies. The Shining is always a classic. It's always something someone's going to watch. Even though Stephen King came out and didn't like it, it's still a classic. But I think you are right with the made-for-TV version of It. They kind of compressed the entire story, tried to fit it in, and it was a longer movie, and I don't really think they did that good of a job. Like I said, there were things I really like about the movie. It scared the shit out of me when I was a kid, but with these newer ones, they really did a good job.
It's true. So, for my number 5, I'm going with Jaws. You know, going back and thinking about it, there's no other movie that really constitutes a horror movie unlike Jaws. Like Jaws literally made people think about getting in the water.
It still does.
People watch Jaws and refuse to get into the ocean.
Yeah, and pools.
Like
Any body of water.
the animatronics that they used obviously could have had some work. It was, I mean, there's a reason.
I think they did a really good job. There's certain scenes where it's not an animatronic; it's a real shark. There's certain scenes they use. There's amazing acting. Steven Spielberg, amazing director. He's come out with so many great movies.
True.
Jaws, in my mind, I think you could constitute it as a horror film. I understand what you're saying.
Oh, I mean, it is constituted as a horror film.
But in my opinion, I think it's more suspense/thriller. But I understand where you're coming from with the horror, and I think it could be on this list. I do. Like I said in the last episode, one of my all-time favorite movies, and always will be. And it's just there's something about really the 70s, right? We have The Exorcist, the first Halloween. We have Jaws, 1975. You know, it's just something about the 70s that they just can't really make movies the same nowadays. You know what I mean? There's just something about those movies, especially those three, that just kind of set the mark in a way for future movies to come.
So, most people, and this is a poll that's on Google, most people judge horror movies as a monster-based movie or a slasher film. And by that context, it does fall into horror.
Yeah.
That being said, Jaws is, when it came out, said it was an adventure thriller. But some people do claim it is a horror. Yeah. And I think as far as that goes, I think there's no other movie that made you question getting in the water, swimming it over. There's a reason why there's a fear for open water.
Yeah.
And it's because of Jaws.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, it has its own... Shark movies have their own genre now.
Yeah.
Because of Jaws.
They just can't make them the same.
Oh, of course
There's
not.
something about Jaws that just... It's a shark movie. Oh, it's just a shark movie? But it's Jaws. You know what I mean? I feel like everyone kind of compares modern day shark movies to Jaws, and it's always going to be that way just because it's such an iconic film. I mean, you got the classic line, "We're going to need a bigger boat."
It's true.
And they didn't know how much of an impact that was going to have in theaters, that they extended that scene, because when he's throwing the chum in the water and that shark comes up, originally he said we're going to need a bigger boat a lot sooner, and they had to extend that scene because during test screenings people were so shocked by that shark coming out of the water for the first time that they're like, oh my god. They were just reacting.
Isn't there still a Jaws ride?
Yeah, a little bit. Universal Studios, okay. They've kind of gone off the end with that one, but I think they've tried to move over to more newer stuff,
more modern day.
But it's still there, and you got to think about where some of these props ended up. Movie props nowadays, they go on sale for so much money, and some of those animatronic sharks that they used in the film ended up in just junkyards in LA.
Could you imagine finding one of those and seeing it? Like, that thing would be worth so much money nowadays if it was real.
Exactly. Just thinking about it and just being like, man, you know, that I've seen this movie a million fucking times. Yeah. And just thinking about just how iconic a film it was and how much of a role it played in my life, just loving movies. Yeah. You can't really quite get that feeling from first watching a movie, and I wish that you could really erase your memory and watch a movie for the first time again.
I completely
There's
agree.
so many movies on my list. If I were to have a list of movies I could rewatch for the first time, so many movies on my
I
list.
completely agree. All right. So round it out. What's your number 5 pick?
My number 5 pick, I'm going to go with Insidious.
Okay.
I think Insidious was really just a scary fucking movie. I thought it was scary. You know, kid going into a coma. They find out he's kind of in this lucid, just almost another realm kind of thing. You know what I mean? And okay, evil spirits from this realm are coming out and tormenting this family, you know, and it's just kind of, there's a lot of very, very scary scenes in this movie that really stand out to me, and I was really scared watching this movie, and that's why it's on my list.
So personally, I've never been a big fan of Insidious. You know, a lot of people thought it was buku crazy or buku scary.
Yeah.
I didn't see it. You know, to me, once I saw the creature or the demon, I immediately was like, now it's ruined. I can't unwatch this now. But I get where you're coming from. You know, there are a lot of people that love that movie. And there's a lot of people who put that up there with The Conjurings and Nightmare on Elm Street that say it is one of the best movies.
I really think it made my list just because of how scared I was when I first watched the film. There are so many different movies that I could have put at number 5.
Yeah.
I just picked this one because of how scared I was when I watched it. When you think of horror movies, you think of, I don't know if I want to watch this movie because I'm scared. You know, like people like us who at the beginning of this episode, we said we love getting scared. That's like, okay, yes, we're watching this. But that's why it made my list, just because I was scared when I first watched it, and that's why it's number 5.
So I think people go one or two ways. I think people either love scary movies or they hate scary movies. And if you're one of those that loves scary movies, you know, you have your list. And you have your top 5, you have your top 10. And the ones that don't, there's a reason why.
Yeah, there's not a lot of scary movies nowadays that really make you scared, because you know you can kind of tell yourself it's on a screen. You know what I mean? It's fake. It's a movie. But one of the things that makes a good horror movie, in my opinion, is the fact that it scares you. You know what I mean? I really like that.
So the thing that I've always really liked about horror movies is it keeps you, like, it makes you just feel like there's nothing that just gets your heart pumping like a horror movie does, like being scared. And I mean, that's one of the things I've always loved. So, you know, we're going to kind of go off the rails a little bit. We've got our top 5. I think your list is, you know, a solid list outside of Insidious. But hit me with some of your honorable mentions. What could have been in your top 5 that didn't make your top 5?
I think a couple movies that definitely could have been in that 5th slot. I don't think I'm going to change my top 4, but I think one thing that could have definitely made that 5th slot was a movie called The Strangers. It was a slasher film, you know, something that could have definitely made number 5. It was something that could happen in real life. You know, your parents tell you all the time when you're little, don't talk to strangers. And this movie kind of sheds a new light on what your parents were telling you, especially when you watch it at an older age. You think to yourself, maybe I should have listened to my parents a little bit more. Maybe I shouldn't be too friendly with strangers, because you never quite know who you're talking to. And that's really what this movie kind of shines a light on. And just a classic home invasion film. I thought it was very simple. It wasn't anything really crazy like with other slasher films, and that's why I really actually think that it's a good movie. It's nothing crazy, and it kind of just makes you think this could actually happen. You know what I mean? It's a movie that just makes you think.
So I mean, I completely agree. You know, the thing that made The Stranger so good was the things they didn't do. They let your mind kind of overanalyze a lot of things
Because
and
it's
then-
so simple.
yeah, and it kind of spun you up and made its own guesses on what's going on to make it to where you were scared. For my honorable mention, I've got the Blair Witch Project.
Blair Witch Project, classic movie. Definitely could have. It's on my honorable mentions too. It's a lot slower of a found footage film.
Of course. Well, I mean, it really, I mean, obviously you have Cannibal Holocaust, which is like the original found footage film.
Yeah.
But the Blair Witch Project really, the found footage that we have today wouldn't be a thing without the Blair Witch Project.
I definitely 100% agree with that statement. And the things that they did for this movie when it first came out, they put missing persons reports, even sometimes, presumed dead reports for the actors in this movie. They had people writing the actresses and actors' parents saying, "I'm so sorry for your loss," because everyone thought this movie was real. And I think
true.
that's something you don't really see nowadays with a found footage film. Oh, hey, we found this footage in X location. This is what it revealed. It was found by police or something like that. You don't really get that sense of, was it found? You know what I mean? From newer found footage films. And I really think that the Blair Witch Project definitely set the stage, definitely set the mark for found footage films. And found footage films today wouldn't be a thing without the Blair Witch Project. I 100% agree with that.
I completely agree. All right, so out of your top 5, if you had to recommend one movie for someone to watch tonight, what would you recommend?
That's a hard question to answer because there's so many different types of horror movies. You have demonic entity movies, I guess could be paranormal. You have slasher films, you have alien films. I think one classic that didn't make our list would be Aliens. I really
thought
think
about that one.
Just that movie in general, just if you haven't seen that movie, it's one that you just have to watch. With the whole face hugger coming onto your face and literally laying eggs inside of you, and the alien just incubating inside of your body and then exploding out of your chest. That's something that's just kind of disturbing to think about.
Sure.
Disturbing to think about. Something's growing inside of me and then it's just going to burst out of my chest. That's really upsetting to think about, you know what I mean? And there's kind of a violation of something literally clinging onto your face and laying eggs inside of you that just kind of makes this movie a good horror film. And I really like where they went with the series of it. And just with watching Aliens, you have multiple other movies that continue this story, 2 and 3, where you can really get that more character development from Sigourney Weaver's character.
It's true.
And
I mean, you
it's
also
just
have
really good.
Prometheus. I mean,
Prometheus.
There's been so many movies that have came after Alien 1 that, I mean, the genre is just packed.
Yeah, and that one thing I really like about the movie is I love the fun facts about the movie. And that first chest bursting scene where the alien pops out of his chest. None of the actors in that scene knew what was going on other than the guy that the alien burst out of his chest.
I can believe
so
it.
that reaction that you have from all of them is real. And it's cool to hear stuff like that because you're always looking for a good actor or a good actress that's going to play their part really well. But when you can read a fun fact and see that, hey, this scene was a genuine reaction, I really like hearing that because it really adds a real home feel to acting, because not a lot of people are good at acting, but when you hear that something was genuine, you can think, well, maybe that's how I would have reacted in that scene. You know what I mean? And it's just really, really something I like about movies like that.
So, according to CBS, the top 10 scary movies, and I guess it's this year's, is The Host, Sinister, Insidious, Conjuring, Hereditary, Terrified, It Follows, Dashcam, A Quiet Place 2, and Paranormal Activity.
Paranormal Activity was on my honorable mention list. They kind of went off the rails with the rest of them. You know, they tried to make them all connect. It was just kind of the ending ones were just kind of just almost.
Yeah.
Come on, like, all right, let's get to the point here. You kind of overstayed your welcome almost, you know. You have the first one and the second one, and I even like the third one, but really after that, there's not many. They tried to make that newer one that came out that was on Paramount Plus, where they were at the Amish community.
Oh,
that
yeah.
It was all right. But they tried to do something new, which is what I liked about it. They tried to do something new other than trying to connect this to the first one.
Yeah, I mean,
and that just shows you how much of an impact the first one had. Is they tried to connect all the other Paranormal Activity movies to the first one.
Sure. And I mean, outside of the Blair Witch, that was one of your first movies that made you question whether this was a real thing, if this was a true story.
Yeah.
So I mean, I can agree with that.
And that scene where they put the powder down on the ground and you see the demon's footprints.
Yeah.
I really like that scene.
All right. Well, is there anything else? Like, is there any other movies that you want to talk about?
I think that the Jordan Peele's movies are definitely, if you're a horror fan, if you watch some of these movies and you really like horror, you got to watch those movies. You know, you got Us and Get Out. Nope. Those
the remake of Candyman.
Yeah, all really good horror movies. I think he really does the horror genre well. I also want to say one that really got me as a kid was Signs. Mel Gibson in it, Joaquin Phoenix. It just really, really got me scared of aliens. Like, if an alien was invading my house, that really scares me. And it's just, there's been times where every time I grab a knife, you know, and I can see my reflection in the knife, I just go back to that scene with the pantry. And it just, if a movie makes me think of that film every time I do something or every time I see something that reminds me of that scene, it's going to be a favorite for mine. So Signs is definitely a favorite for me. If you haven't seen it, you definitely have to watch it. It's just a classic.
I can completely agree. I'll get on board with Signs. I remember that first time you saw the alien walk through the corn.
Yeah, that when he's, you know, you see the flashlight, you see the alien walking in, or even the news scene where they're trying to say, oh, this is the first time we've seen the alien.
That's what I'm saying, when the alien walked through the corn.
I thought you were talking about when Mel Gibson's running through the corn and he's trying to like find them, and then he hears something behind him and he turns around, and all of a sudden you see that just the alien's foot walking into the corn. And you're just, the music drops and it just starts running. Flashlight. It's just really, really an awesome movie. I really like it.
Well, Hughes, I'm glad we could get another episode in before the end of the week. Hopefully we got to sit down and kind of come up with our next game plan on what we're going to do.
We do.
I hope y'all come back and listen to us again.
And definitely, if you're seeing us on YouTube, comment down below what kind of genres you want us to top 5, or what kind of genres you want us to review, and we will definitely put it into an episode. We'll definitely have to do a movie draft again. I really like our episode today.
I completely agree. Well, until next time, guys, y'all stay safe and take it easy.
Have a good one.